Hi, Mike Gibson coming to you live from SCAI 2017. We're talking bioresorbable or bioabsorbable vascular scaffolds with Sahil Parikh. Sahil, where are we with this technology?
Well, I think as we've learned from the clinical evidence, it's a first-generation device. We've seen in Europe for the last several years that its clinical adaptation has been relatively low, percentage-wise, and it's been used in selected patients. Our clinical data here in the United States have been controversial, and we've learned recently that there has been a warning issued because of data from Absorb3 and from the randomized clinical data here in the United States. I think there was already a specter of concern regarding late events. On the other hand, if you look at the absolute number of events in the clinical trial, there are only 4 data points between years 1 and 2 that resulted in this warning letter. And so it's hard to know if it's a stochastic process or if it's in fact a meaningful signal.
Right.
But we know that it's a new first-generation technology, still clinically available here in the United States, and that it has a place probably in our armamentarium, but exactly what that place is remains a bit unclear at this time.
A new first-generation technology, but also very early in the learning curve, right? As
Without
we
question.
have to learn how, as operators, to optimize this performance. So what have been some of the lessons?
Well, I think clearly the clinical lessons have been largely that we need to aggressively predilate and prep the lesions. Perhaps we were spoiled by our current generation of metallic drug-eluting stents because the technology is so good now that it's a lot easier to deliver. I recall being training in the Cypher era and the Taxus era when we had to sort of go back to the future and learn again how to deliver thick strutted stents that were stiff and had poor delivery systems.
Yeah.
And akin to that, we need to do the same with BVS. And the Absorb technology, and so I think that
we got a little spoiled.
We have been spoiled by how good our current metallic drug-eluting stents are. So the adage is PSP. You want to prep the lesions appropriately and size it properly, and then post-dilate.
Yeah.
And sizing can often be a bit of a challenge, particularly in lesions where you are a little bit concerned that you're not properly prepped. So if you haven't predilated aggressively, you may not be able to size properly, and then you'll perhaps be unable to adequately post-dilate when you need to. And so I think that lesson is not lost. I think given the lack of frequency of using intracoronary imaging, we perhaps as a field have lost our touch with sizing. And I think this technology, while not absolutely mandatory to image, I think imaging is helpful, specifically in identifying pathologies that may be resistant to dilation and also sizing the vessel itself. So I think those are probably the clinical lessons that we've learned from our application of the technology. And we are still in a relative infancy in learning how these devices can be used effectively.
When you do an IVUS, is there any kind of lesion characteristics you identify that say, this may be a no-go for
Yeah, well, I think
BVS?
clearly the small vessels have been demonstrated to be potentially high risk. And so really vessel diameter probably is the most important. Calcific lesions where you feel like you can get adequate lesion preparation, whether it's using debulking technologies or specialty balloons or just excellent predilatation, those are probably things that you'll know better as a consequence of your intravascular imaging. For example, 360 calcium is the enemy of all intervention. And so in those situations, finding a way to get adequate expansion is critical. And in point of fact, for both metallic DES and bioresorbable scaffolds, the lack of expansion is probably a major predictor of failure.
Right.
And so I think that those are all lessons that are basically, again, back to the future, lessons that we've learned from intravascular imaging that are proving to be more valuable.
Right.
And OCT has, I think, clearly been buoyed by the use of this technology because you can potentially see it in the post-implantation setting better when you have optical coherence tomography. And so OCT also gives you very high resolution imaging of the vessel size, lesion length, and its characteristics, which may be potential inhibitors of adequate lesion sizing and preparation.
Well, thank you for stopping by. Thanks for your very thoughtful discussion and comments on this first generation technology. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks to all of you for joining us live from SCAI 2017.